call the meeting to order. We have roll call.
Member Cordova,
Here.
Member Hamilton,
Here.
Secretary Epps. Here. Vice President Osborne. Here. President Martin.
Here. We do have a quorum to proceed in our work study. First of all, we want to say thank you for all the dedicated and hard work that you guys have put into this. Just pray that as we go forward, it'll be a simple process, but a necessary process. At this time, we have approval of our agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. At this time, I'll turn it over to our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to welcome all of the public who has joined us here today and Mr. Briseno. So I want to explain a little bit about the difference between a work study session and a regular board meeting. A work study session gives the board the opportunity to dive deeply into maybe a complex or complicated issue. It allows for exchange between the people who are part of the work study session. And so you see a lot of people sitting around the table because we've got input coming from a lot of different directions. And so in this format, we won't have the opportunity for open forum, but there will be that opportunity tonight at the regular meeting. And so tonight, the same information is going to be presented again. This is a very lengthy process, and there is such a wide scope of information and data that had to be analyzed and understanding the expectations. That's why this is a process that started in September. To be thorough and to approach it appropriately, it requires that kind of an investment. So that's what you will see today. There's some teas and waters back here, and you're welcome to help yourself to that. And something that's a little bit unique, because this is such an important topic for many parts of our community. We sought out a group of our community leaders as well to come be a part of the meeting. We have one just for those leaders. We had 4 attend yesterday. We've got some additional here today, and some will be coming tomorrow. And the reason that we've enlisted their help in this process is that it is a massive amount of information to understand. And we know that people are going to be seeking understanding all around the community. And so our goal with inviting this additional layer of our community partners is to increase the number of folks around the city that people can go to say, help me better understand this. And so our goal is not to persuade any of our community leaders that one recommendation is preferred over the other. It's to educate so that we have people that are accessible around our community to help answer those questions. And so just for the sake of transparency, I just want to let you know who those folks are that have agreed to serve in that role. We have Mr. David Briseno, County Commissioner or County Manager Lance Powell was here yesterday. Mayor Morris was here yesterday. Amy Egbert has been part of the process. Commissioner Paula will be joining us on Wednesday. Retired educator Pam Sweet will be joining us tomorrow. Hank Vasquez Sr. is expected to come today. Ms. Constance Williams will be joining us tomorrow. Pastor Gillis is with us today. Commissioner Madrid joined yesterday. I believe Commissioner Martin will be joining us tomorrow. Commissioner Casaus joined yesterday. Mark Carpenter, business owner, is here with us today. And Commissioner Gene Porter has been invited as well. So I just wanted everybody to understand why there are some that are sitting up here that would engage in the conversation. The conversation's primarily for us to present the research and findings to the school board. We are just initiating the conversation phase of this year-long process. So I just wanted to set the stage for you a little bit. I'll pass it to Mr. Brady.
Good afternoon, board, or good morning right now, but it will be afternoon when we finish this. My job is to introduce our consultants on our Zoom link right now, Michael Sharp, who managed our redistricting and worked with our committee and cabinet to look at our boundaries. That'll be a part of what we do today and discuss. And then also Molly Smith and Josh Chisholm, they're facility planners. Molly works on the environment and demographic information, making sure that we're aligned to standards. Josh and his team are engineers, and they actually do the facility assessments and make the recommendations on priorities of what we need to address from those critical facility needs to those. If you have the money, let's do that kind of stuff. And so they're an outstanding team. They've worked with us in the past on a prior facility plan. That's where I became acquainted with them initially. But I want to set the stage before they begin on their PowerPoint presentation and present to you. A district facilities master plan is required by the state every 5 years, creates a roadmap the district follows for capital projects over a 5-year period. Why did we look to facility planners, specifically to Molly and Josh? Is because they are industry experts. And as we talk and spoke with state level PSFA employees, they really did help us understand the expertise that these two bring to the table in developing plans with districts and helping those get through the approval process and working collaboratively with districts as we look at facility needs and we go forward looking for that state match funding that's so critical to be able to take care of our facilities. And so I really do appreciate all that they've done. They've worked with, I said again, over 10 years ago, they helped us develop the plan. So they're very familiar with Clovis schools. Now, it's important to understand that we did our own in-house plans for a decade or so. And this is the first time that we've employed these folks in over 10 years. And they brought a lot of expert opinions as well as recommendations that helped us that brought us to the table right now. One of the things that Josh did specifically with Ryan, his partner, and when you think about the facilities, they were on site before we started our first meetings in September. They went through every facility top to bottom and they assessed that using standards, also their expertise, and they brought a set of recommendations as engineers as what needs to be addressed from the top priority all the way to the nice to have. And it was early on, it was very evident that our seat capacity outnumbered the capacity of students, the number of students that we had in our district. So they came back fairly early with a recommendation of right sizing and really just understanding that we need to make sure that we have the right number of seats that fit the population of students that we have. So more seats than students was their immediate recommendation on what we needed to do to right size our district. And so with that being said, I would like to turn this part of the meeting over to Molly and Josh. They have a PowerPoint presentation that they'll be presenting to you. So with that being said, Josh, welcome. Molly, welcome.
Good morning, members of the board that are here, and superintendent, and Jay and Lauren, and members of the committee that have been working with us for quite a while. What we're going to do is show you, we're just going to walk you through, it's kind of a story of what we've been doing since we were hired back in September. And Josh's team has been very good about looking at all your facilities. And then the committee that we've been working with has been over 30 people, very dedicated. As I said, we've been through a process for the last 6 months or so with our committee. Over 30 people have been part of this committee. And we have a team of consultants that we put together to help the committee bring data to the committee to make recommendations. Now, we do not make recommendations. Sometimes we do say, hey, according to what we see, these are some things that we would offer up to you for consideration. But what our job is really is to bring data to the committee to look at and kind of put all the puzzle pieces together. So we have Capital AE, who is our prime on this project. That's Josh Chisholm and Ryan. And then we have myself, Think Smart Planning. I've been around quite a while, have done a lot of work in New Mexico, probably almost 30 years in New Mexico, and have been to Clovis before. I planned your middle school, and then your last middle school, and then I was the prime on your contract, the last contract you had for facility planning, district master planning. And then we used a demographer, Applied Economics, to help us with our projections of your enrollment and what he sees. And then when I show you these numbers, be aware that these numbers are pretty much the same type of trends we see all over the whole state. So Clovis isn't really unique in that. We do have a wiki site. If any of you are interested in looking at that, there's a QR code if you want to take a picture. You can go straight to that wiki site, and what we've done is posted all of our presentations and our data on there. For instance, you may want to read the demographic report in more detail. The process, The process that we go through for master planning is really mandated to us by the state. They don't tell us exactly how we have to do it, but they do ask us to go through certain steps in order for the committee to get all the information. And the first step is, having the committee set goals. What are your big picture goals for the schools, for the community? And then we start bringing facts in, demographics and capacities and school condition. And then we start identifying what the needs are of the community. That's the committee's job. And then we have quite a few options that are identified by our third meeting. It's usually far more money than we have to spend. So we add another fact, which is the financial condition at the district. What do we have to spend from, whether that means asking for a bond or using your SB 9 funds or whatever your operating funds are. And that helps the committee set priorities for the master plan, because obviously you have to have a balanced budget in order to do a master plan. And then we create the master plan, which is the map to success, we call it. And, and that master plan goes to the state, PSFA, and PSCOC, and they will read through it. They will approve that and send you an approval letter. So from here on out, everything that you are going to the state for to ask for funding or for their participation, you must have your master plan approved first in order to do that. And the reason that they do that is they want to make sure that you have had the opportunity to expose your community to this, to have community decision making. It didn't just get made by a couple of people, that kind of thing. Here's some pictures of the community work sessions. I don't know if any of you were there, but they were lively. We had a good turnout at every single meeting, lots of discussion. In these meetings, we talk about really anything because we're not spending any money at that point, so everything's on the table, and that's where things get vetted and decided on. First thing, sort of the high level goals that we set that would basically guide our decision making in projects and options was we asked the committee to take this online poll. And so this is how they ranked their goals. School modernization being the very top thing. They want to make sure we have safe and secure learning environments, collaboration spaces. The committee is interested in expanding the CTE experience, especially for the middle school and the freshman academy level students. The number 2 goal was choices to support learning, so having more student resources, expanding CTE, parks, rec, sports, training, those kinds of things. 3 was really having positive student engagement. So looking at things we can do for social emotional learning, anti-bullying, having appealing experiences at all levels, having higher parent and community involvement. Number 4 was the utilization of resources. And this is pretty much a very important topic, because when you look at everything you have, the number of facilities versus the number of students versus the age of facilities versus where you're going with enrollment, it's important to make sure you're going on the right track to right-sizing your facilities, making sure that you are not paying, as Josh would say, $5 a square foot for space, empty space in your school. So every time you have an empty seat, you are paying money in maintenance and utilities and so forth for space that you're really underutilizing. So that was an important goal. And then modernizing learning. So, personalizing the learning experience. And that means every time that you're going to build a new school, renovate, or anything like that, that you are trying to update your schools to modern teaching environments where you have collaboration experiences and better social experiences, school choice, lots of choice in schools, individual learning, all those kinds of things was important to the committee. In our second meeting, we brought to the committee enrollment trends. Now, this report is done by our demographer, Applied Economics. One of the charts we showed the committee that he gave us is the historic K through 12 enrollment. Be aware that moving forward from here on out, we are going to be talking about pre-K through 12. But if you're looking backwards backwards from 2002 to 2022. It was K-12 at that point, and that was who you were reporting to the state. You can see that from a high in 2011 of 8,486 students, you declined to 7,347 students in 22-23. So that decline is approximately 1,000 students over the course of that 11-year period, roughly 100 students a year. The red line you see is percentage change per year. So you had a year in there where you got quite a big bump in percentage, but most of the time we've been under the zero line, which means we've had negative enrollment in those years. And we do look at that by grade cohort because we want to see, is every grade declining or do we have certain grades that are going up? If we had, for instance, K through 12 and 3 through 5 going up, that would be a good thing for us because those students are moving through our system. But we basically see here that all the cohorts are have been going down at a gradual pace. And then when Applied Economics projected our numbers forward, they are projecting a loss of 310 students of the next 5 years, which is a loss of about 60 students per year. That's, if you remember what I just said about the losses before, 60 students per year is a slowdown in decline. It is a decline, but it's a slowdown in decline. And that line there of the gray bars is flattening. And so that's a good thing that we're not going down quickly because dealing with change going up or going down at a rapid pace is very difficult for school districts to deal with. So with this type of decline, we can make some decisions about what to do. Now we're going to look at capacity and utilization. And so just to define that, capacity is if you look at the original floor plans of every school and you count the number of teaching stations. In elementary schools, that's homeroom classrooms, but in middle and high schools, that is classrooms plus art, music, PE, CTE, all the spaces that students could be in. When you multiply that by the number of students that Clovis enrolls per class, per PED guidelines, it's usually around 20 students for pre-K and K, and then it goes up from there, 22, 24 in elementary, 28 in high school. So when we multiply that, the number of teaching stations times those numbers, we get a maximum capacity. That means you would be filling your schools up 100%, which we do not recommend. Schools don't operate like that very well. And so the state and sort of the national industry standard is that we apply what we call an efficiency factor onto that. And so elementary schools work very well when they're at 95% efficiency. And then anything under 75% efficiency is considered underutilized. And so somewhere between that number is what we would want to see, between 95 and 75. Middle schools and high schools range from 85% to 90%, given the fact that we change classes. And so it is less efficient for us at those grade levels. And then one more thing we do is adjust capacity according to your SPED numbers. If a school has a SPED program, like they may have an autism program, something like that, those classrooms are loaded at a much lower rate. And so we do give an adjustment for that. And then when we say what your utilization rate is, it's very simply, it is the enrollment divided by the adjusted capacity. And so we do like to see those utilizations, you know, at elementary be around 95%, middle and high school be 85 or 90%. And here's an example how we do it. This is just a floor plan of a school that we've done that. We just literally go and count the number of classrooms. You can see that in the light green color. And then we multiply that times how many students in each of those classrooms. These are the elementary school capacity and utilization numbers for Clovis. And so you can see the purple bar is the functional capacity. That is the capacity. It's already been adjusted and everything. That's the capacity we would like to see at that school ideally. Then the yellow bar is the current enrollment. And then the orange bar is the projected enrollment. And then the two numbers below, the top number is the utilization today, and the bottom number is the utilization in 28-29, what we are projected to be. And so everything that is this red, any of these red colors is underutilized. Anything that is pink is a low utilization. It's sort of on the edge. And then everything that is yellow or the darker yellow is nearing capacity. And then the lightest yellow is over capacity. And so you can see that we do have two schools that are in the nearing capacity and over capacity range, and that is Highland and Mesa. But all of the rest of the schools are low or underutilized, and they are not going up. They are going down in most cases. And so just to put that in perspective, we like to show the district that on your enrollment map, because sometimes geographically we can see maybe what's going on, on certain sides of town. And you can see that everything to the south and southwest is underutilized. Cameo, Arts Academy, La Casita, Lockwood. And then everything in the middle is low, and then everything to the northeast is nearing capacity. And so these are the middle schools, and you can see sort of the same kind of a story here. We've got the capacities, we've got the current enrollment, we've got Marshall projected to have a little bit of an uptick in the next 5 years. But Gaddis and Yucca will see slight declines in the next 5 years. And this is the Freshman Academy on the left and Clovis High School on the right. And you can see that Freshman Academy is used at about 56%, and then high school is used at about 61% and going down to 58% in the next 5 years. And that means we have a certain number of seats open in all these schools. These are the alt schools. Here's the I Academy. Again, 46% utilization. Los Niños, fairly high utilization at Los Niños because that's a school people sign up to. So you can kind of control the enrollment there. And my understanding is that they always have a waiting list. So that's a good thing. If we look at the district overall, you are currently being utilized at 68%. That means 32% of your seats are open. And then in 28-29, we're projected to be utilized at 65%. So 35% of your seats will be open. And just to put that in numbers, your enrollment is 7664. The recommended capacity is 11,282. Seats available, 3,618, 32% today. So you can see that we aren't going in the getting more utilized direction. We're going in the getting less utilized direction. So when we look at that, we would make recommendations, and we would say that, right now, 4 of 11 of your schools are underutilized in the elementary. All of the middles are underutilized, all the high schools and all of the alt schools are underutilized. And then 2 of the elementaries are at or near capacity. And so our recommendation is that you replace older or poor condition schools and right size where needed. And what that means is if you replace a school or you consolidate or anything like that, that you look at making sure that that school is designed appropriately for the enrollment that you have. And our other recommendation to the committee was the possibility of looking at enrollment boundaries, which I believe you're going to talk about at the elementary level. And then the high school, because the high school is high up on the list of the buildings that the state would fund for renovation, we recommend that if you are renovating that school or replacing, that you right size as you go. So if you renovate the high school in phases, you right size those facilities as you go. I'm going to turn it over to Josh at this time.
Thank you, Molly, and good morning, board. Mr. Brady, appreciate the recap of the portion that we've done. As Mr. Brady mentioned, we have a team of engineers that assessed your buildings. And then, of course, we walk alongside your team and with Molly throughout this process to help develop options, to help lead the discussion. And of course, our primary goal here is to inform and teach the community how to interpret the data, because not everyone knows what our alarm control panel is or the life expectancy of asphalt pavement is. And so part of our job is to get the committee informed so they can help make decisions that are best for your district. And so thank you for the time today. The purpose here is to explain that this is less than 10% of the data that we really do gather, but we try to boil that down to a point that is what we call the cheat sheet. And everyone in the committee had a copy of this in their hands throughout the second half of the steering committee meetings. And this data is really what's driving the conversation, and it helps the committee members who have never done this before put the puzzle pieces together and to start making recommendations. So there's two columns here, well, three columns that I want to point out. On the far left, of course, is the facility, and then the two colorful columns there in the center is the condition rank. This rank is the condition of the building, and that is a number that is ranked against all New Mexico schools. And so there's just under 800 schools in the state, and they're all ranked against each other based on the condition. So of course, the darker the red, the worse the condition, the lower the number, the worse condition. The darker green means it's a better condition, and the higher the number means better condition. So for example, what jumps out at me is Highland Elementary School. They're in kind of the top middle, which is at a rank 645, almost at the top, which that building was constructed or opened in 2019. So we would expect that to be in good condition. And then a contrast to that is further down at the bottom, Clovis High School or I Academy at the Lincoln Jackson building. Those were both constructed in the 50s. And of course, the condition of those buildings is much worse than a brand new school. So that's kind of a simplistic version of how to interpret that column. And then of course, on the far right-hand side is the utilization rate that Molly just walked through, which looks at how many seats do we have in these buildings and how many kids do we have in them. And so this does not take into consideration portable buildings. But of course, we would like to see those buildings in a healthy range, somewhere in the 85% range. And so, you know, the lower the number means we have more seats than we have kids, and that would be darker red. And the higher the percentage there means it's more utilized. So we have so many seats and we have so many kids in them, more kids sitting in those seats than open seats. And so, as Molly mentioned, we do go through an exercise with the committee that explains to them what this looks like from a dollar perspective. We do talk about utilities and maintenance, and then what we call capital projects, meaning if that's an elementary school and it needs a new roof, that every 20 years-ish, 25 years, going to need to put a new roof on that. That's a $2 million deal. So if you spread those dollars over the life expectancy of all the different things that need replaced, we also integrate that in and help the committee understand that if at a certain point you have too many open seats, that's going to cost your district. Well, at the grand scheme of things, it's redirecting funds away from the classroom and into caring for a building that is underutilized. All right. So, of course, as Molly mentioned, a balanced budget is an important piece of the pie. We can't develop a facilities master plan that's not capable of being funded. So we spent a significant amount of time with the leadership, the finance department, and we also met with RBC Capital, your bond counsel, financial advisor, to get a good feel for how much funding really is available and where are those sources to be able to invest in the next 5 years into our district. And so just quickly, starting at the top, there's $5 million in existing bond funds that are still available to be sold. The next row is SB9 money. So we also work with the district to understand how much of that SB9 money is required for operating, because we can't just set out on a 5-year journey and forget that we also have to fix toilets that break and rooftop units that fail or heat pumps that need replaced. Operations is still something that needs to be considered, right? So SB9 money is something that we looked at, and we did reduce that number from the total. I want to say the total was more closer to $3 million a year total revenue. And so that was reduced to ensure that operationally the district had what it took to take care of those daily issues and reoccurring costs. So 10, multiply that times 5, you have a little over 10 million there. House Bill 33 funds is available. There's almost 16 million available there over the next 5 years. A little bit of impact aid money comes in, just over 70 grand for that. So there's 350 grand available there. This totals just over $31 million. And so really the only other major financial resource that can or cannot be available for school districts is, of course, a general obligation bond. And so we look at what your bond capacity is. And we also look at if there are any opportunities for a no tax increase bond. And so you're hovering in this was put together last summer. And so our understanding is that maximum bond capacity is actually a little bit lower now. I think it's in the closer to 13 or 14 million. But that is the most that's available. Of course, you have outstanding bond debt from historical bonds that you're paying down annually. And so you're constricted by that, the bond debt that you currently have. But somewhere in the 13 to $14 million range is actually your bond capacity. And there is no opportunity in the near future, at least not in the next 5 years, for a no tax increase bond. And so that's why that dollar amount is zeroed out. It's just not applicable in this point in time. So the green circled in red number that's our sandbox. And we've been working through the facilities master plan with the committee, with the understanding that we understand that we literally have hundreds of millions of dollars of ideas and things that we have thrown on the dartboard, but we are going to have to prioritize those and select down the number of projects that's going to fit within the budget. So 31.5 million was the magic number. And just for reference, there was some House Bill 505 money that was awarded this fiscal year, but that's allocated. And we just wanted the committee to understand that some maintenance repair money was invested, and also on access control upgrades as well. It was 1.5 million there. So 31 million is a magic number. And with that, we're going to turn it back to Mr. Brady.
Yes, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Molly. Okay, so let's talk about facility utilization and state funding. If CMS chooses not to right size, we are jeopardizing our ability to receive that state funding, that match for capital outlay projects. This could cost the district millions in state match funding over the course of the next 5 years. We currently have a match of 32%. That's 32 cents in a dollar to their 68 cents that the state will provide. One of the factors is without effective levels of utilization in our schools, those capital expenses could become our responsibility holistically. With that being said, when we talk about utilization, I want to make sure that you guys get when the state comes in and they look and they inspect our buildings, and they do that yearly, okay? They send people down from PSFA. If we're not using our classrooms, so let's say hypothetically we have a kindergarten classroom and we have coverage with second graders, when they assess our facilities and we have a second grade classroom in that kindergarten classroom, that has a negative impact on our overall rating. And for us to be measured as a district that is being good stewards of our maintenance and renovation dollars, we have to have a score of 80% or better as we start looking at asking PSCOC for funding. And that's one of the factors that we use when we go to the committee to ask for funds. And so making sure that we're utilizing our space the way that it's intended to. Again, Josh mentioned that portables do not count in that utilization. And we can take into account that as we look at renovating the high school, that's going to be, they estimate, about a $300 million price tag to renovate that school or replace it. And so our match, 32% of that, you can see that's millions of dollars that we'll have to produce and looking forward. So $1 million, if you'll take a moment to look, that's $1 million bill. I wish I had one of those. But $320,000 out of $1 million that we expend is our expense. And so when we think about the total capacity or cost, D building to renovate is estimated to be a $26 million project. 9 million of that is our expense when we start looking at our state match dollars. That does come out of our GO bond as a source of our match dollars that we utilize. And then right now, our total cost is beyond our capacity to bond in our community. I think Josh covered that quite well. And so going out for a bond without raising taxes is not something that we can do. And so bond dollars for match are not going to be something that we can really incur. And our maximum bond that we've atypically gone for, our bond that we go out for, is 20 million. And so it'll be some time before we can do something like that. And I would like to mention that pre-COVID construction costs were $300 to $400 a square foot. In today's environment after COVID, we're looking at $1,000 a square foot plus being able to renovate or to rebuild a school facility for right sizing. So what have we learned? We're going to briefly skim this because Molly did a fantastic job of illustrating that. So again, you can look at our birth rate. They did mention declining enrollment. The state has seen a 28% decline. Perry County has had a 5.6% decline over the last 5 years, which is extremely good. We live in a bubble, and our military installation is a big reason that we don't see quite as much, but you do see that there's going to be a negative declination over the course of the next 5 years. And then our enrollment trends, I won't spend much time on that, but I will reference that. And then also our projected enrollment going into 29. We've already covered that material. And then Molly did a good job of really illustrating what maximum recommended and adjusted capacity is. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Renee.
Thank you, Jake. I just want those of you who are joining us today to know that in your red packet, there are some handouts. And then for the public, everything that we are presenting is going to find its way to a special place on our website called Facilities Master Planning. And you can access these presentations. After we finish today, all of this information is something that you can access, download, and dig through, okay? So those of you on the committee and board members, I want to draw your attention. This is just a little bit different representation of the data that Molly has shared. It breaks that utilization down into this table, beginning on the top with our elementary schools, then middle, and working down to secondary. And so the first column of numbers, the max capacity permanent, that's if we stuffed them everywhere we could stuff students and staff, and that is not our goal. And so before we start moving into recommendations, I just want to make sure that everybody is solid on the idea that 85% is our target. Because when, and it's not an if, it's a when we need to go to the state to try to access the match funds. If we are not at or near that 85% threshold, we're likely to get turned down for those dollars because they will say to us, you don't need more dollars to renovate and maybe build new because you're not using your own space well. You're not being a good steward. You need to go back and get your house in order. And so as we get ready to start moving into the recommendations, that 85% really drove how all of the recommendations came together. So the third column on this table represents 95% of the maximum. And so just know that we're working to not overcrowd, but to hit that special number of roughly that 85%. So this just represents the data that she shared in a little bit different way. I also want you to know that your second page is that condition, capacity, and utilization. So they did a wonderful job of explaining the ranking. If you're number one in line to go to the bank to get money. But if you go to the bank to get money, you need to be at the 85% utilization in your district, not just in that building. And you need to have good FMAR scores, which means that we're taking care of all of our facilities to a certain standard all of the time. The other things that we'll reference as we go through, I just want you to know that there's a map with current elementary boundaries. And there will be a map that we'll reference as we start describing some of the recommendations. And then we'll finish with the table on the back. As you can imagine, being able to pour through all of this information and really have a full understanding of it, it did take the full year with 3 to 4 hour meetings that were attended by the committee members and leadership. And we want to emphasize that we're just now starting the conversation period of that. We did take the last week or 10 days or so to go personally to visit campuses that might be most directly impacted through the recommendations. We knew that that created the possibility that bits and pieces would go out into the community and probably would not be well understood. But it really mattered to us to put ourselves in front of our employees and have them hear the possibilities from us and not read about it on the internet or on the paper. Sadly, some of that has gone on anyway. It's human nature. But we knew that that might be something that would happen, but we really felt we needed to sit in front of them and feel the emotion they were feeling, and experience that with them and just kind of have the courage to do that. And so as we start moving into what the committee has ultimately recommended, we also want to acknowledge that there is that emotional aspect. If you have worked at a facility for an extended period of time, if you attended that school when you were growing up, you have family members, and we want people to have that emotional attachment. We want it to have been a good experience so that those buildings matter. And so we acknowledge that. But to steal your words that you've used with me before is that there's a rational side as well. And you're in a tough spot as a board because you have one of your number one jobs as a board is to be responsible with the fiscal soundness of the district. And so fiduciary responsibility is one of your number one responsibilities. And so I would hope that our audience can understand that the weight that is on our board. And quite frankly, we're really glad to relieve this over to you,
Hey.
and put that weight on your shoulders. So the other thing before we move into recommendations is that it's lengthy. To see the whole picture come together, you've kind of got to patiently wait for us to explain each one of the puzzle pieces. We looked at shifts from east to west, west to east, north to south, south to north, crisscross. We really have pulled apart the puzzle and tried to rebuild it to the point that we think we have a puzzle that the pieces are locked together. So it does take some patience to hear it all out. And so I would just ask you to listen with an open mind. And I want to preface it by saying that by the time we get to the end of the story that we're going to tell you about how the puzzle pieces go together, every elementary is at that 85 at or near. Middle schools are untouched because middle schools went through a transition last year. High schools reach about a 75%, but that is something that could be addressed in future renovation, as Molly referenced. So just please demonstrate that grace and patience as we tell the story of the recommendations. Our first recommendation is specific to Cameo Elementary. And as we tried to put that puzzle together different ways, we kept landing back on Cameo. If you think of the conditions index, you see that Cameo is in the red. It's a school that has moved up almost to that top 150 to be in line to go to the bank because that building needs some upgrades. If you look at that table, I think it's about 30+ million to replace it, and current needs are nearing $1 million just to improve it. And you have to understand that as we improve it and do those kind of drag it out over time, with each little improvement, then it moves back down and gets further away from accessing the money. But even if everything was aligned and we went to access that money for Cameo, because we're not at 85% utilization across the district, it's very unlikely. And Jay has had candid conversations with folks at PSFA, PSCOC. The likelihood is, a strong likelihood is that we would be turned away and we could not begin to solve that problem. And so those multiple factors kept driving the decision to start with Cameo to put the puzzle pieces into place. So basically the bottom line is that our footprint is just too large. And we've got to make decisions about how to shrink that footprint. So how this would come alive for Cameo is really important. I can tell you that the staff at Cameo have collectively the hugest hearts for their students. And they have come together under Ms. Smith's leadership to have such a tight bond. They're stretching themselves to learn and apply their own Clark strategies. They are setting it on fire at Cameo. And that makes it really hard to go to that staff and say, we've got to make some changes. But I say all that to say their first priority was their students, and it is important that we can keep as many together and as many staff together. And so that was very considered by the committee as we started trying to put the puzzle pieces together. And so what that would look like, and you may want to reference your boundaries right now to see the exact location and where those kids would be directed. Approximately 120 of those students would go to Sandia. We can tell you that we sat for almost 2 days straight with our demographer and went street by street, house by house. You'll hear more about that. There is hard and fast information about where our children live in the city, what grades they are in. And so that really helped us to identify where should the streets be divided and those kids go a different direction. So in addition to those to Sandia, approximately 85 would go to Arts Academy beginning next year, and approximately 50 would go to James Bickley. Ms. Carpenter will talk towards the end of our presentation about the process that's in place to support staff, but Cameo teachers would be given priority status for determining where their next location and assignment would be. And then Mr. Sparks will talk to us in a little bit as well about how our student support folks have been distributed all across the district this year, because we were renovating the existing student support building and it displaced those folks. This shift with Cameo would allow for the 24-25 year for all of those personnel to once again be consolidated under the same roof. And we know what a loss it would be to the immediate community around Cameo to have the building removed, not next year, but the following year. And so we think that it would be really important for the district to commit to maintaining that green space, to maintaining the playground, perhaps providing some shade structures for protection from the elements for kids that might not have been bus riders who are now bus riders, just to give back to that neighborhood as part of the closure of Cameo. We just think that is the right thing to do. So the shift of Cameo students to those other three campuses really only barely began to scratch the surface in solving the 85% target. And so again, we started looking at where things are so tight on the north side of town, how dense the neighborhoods are, how our population in Clovis has shifted more from the south towards the north end of the city. And so that caused us to take a look at our dual language program. And the second recommendation is that we would consolidate the dual language program that now exists at Lockwood into La Casita, who is only at 40-something% their utilization. They have an entire wing open. And I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Atkins to talk about some of the supporting reasons why this seems to be a good next recommendation number 2.
I think it was at the September board meeting that our bilingual principals presented to you guys about all the work that they've accomplished together for our dual language program. We have really dug deep to not make it a Lockwood program and a La Casita dual language program, but how do we have a common mission, vision, goals to develop a program and not a school type atmosphere? So that those two teams have really come together and worked hard. They're over there working today. The consultant from Washington State is working with them to strengthen our dual language curriculum. And as we looked at the possibility of how do we bring the two programs together to help our utilization. We have one of the largest elementary buildings and capacities at La Casita. And so as we begin to talk about merging the Lockwood dual language program with the La Casita program, that still leaves La Casita under capacity. So likewise, if we were to merge Lockwood or La Casita to Lockwood, they would be way over capacity and couldn't house all of the students. So as we looked at merging those programs, the simplest solution was to move the dual language program of Lockwood to La Casita and really build on that foundation that we've been developing with a common mission, vision, and high expectations for our programming. As we improve our dual language programs, we're even improving from K to 12. We're adding an AP Spanish class at the high school. Your bilingual geniuses, we want to make sure that Clovis Schools is taking care of them and that we're offering the best program possible. As we look at the benefits of bringing those two programs together, we would continue to work with our consultants that are here to define our language and content allocation plan. Right now, Lockwood offers a 50-50 language and content plan, which is 50% Spanish during the day and 50% English instruction during the day for those bilingual students. Where Lockwood is more of a progressive model, it starts out in kindergarten with an 80-20 program, 80% in Spanish, 20% in English, and then it moves, no, I'm mistaken there, it's 70%, no, I'm right. 80% in kinder and 20% English. In first grade, it's 70-30. Second grade, 60-40. And then third through fifth, it's exactly the same as Lockwood, 50-50. So we would work with those consultants. There's some advantages pedagogical wise to stay in that progressive model. The research shows that Spanish language develops more fluently and at a higher level when you have the progressive model. So we really want to look into the advantages and disadvantages of that, because we would be also adding that English component to La Casita and really work to develop that. There are families that live in the La Casita zone that do prefer the English only model. And right now we've set up Lockwood as a partner school for that English strand. So having La Casita have that English strand as well as the bilingual strand would allow those kids to stay in their neighborhood zone. We would have all of the teachers in one location. There is a shortage of teachers with the bilingual or the modern classical endorsement as well as the TESOL endorsement. And that would merge our resources together. There are times we have to write waivers because we'll have a bilingual teacher, but they will not have their TESOL endorsement, which means they understand the English language development side. And we'll have to write waivers. We'll have all of those resources in one roof where we could share kids and put them with the teacher that's mostly highly qualified. In addition to that, we would have professional learning communities where the teachers would have all of the bilingual resources right there, and they could work together like they are today, but on a weekly and a daily basis instead of having an isolated group of dual language teachers across town. Also, we would have all of our instructional resources and all of our instructional staff at one location.
Thank you, Laura. So with that transition, it would be approximately 2/3 of the students from Lockwood that would, through the merger of the bilingual and then the addition of the English only strand at La Casita. That would bring La Casita to that 85% target with utilization. And we think that this provides a real opportunity maybe to launch a project-based learning program for the English only group that would be centered around civic engagement or community and cultural studies, just because that would be a really great companion to the bilingual program, because there's such a focus on culture, very rich cultural component to the dual language programs. And so we don't want it to just be called the English only strand. We would love for it to have its own unique special purpose for those kids as well, that would be coming, some of them back to their own neighborhood, but others that would be coming from what is now zoned as the La Casita zone. So with 2/3 roughly of the Lockwood student population transitioning to La Casita, bringing it to 85%. Then we looked north. Parkview can still accept students as well because they're not near their utilization either. And so our third recommendation involves transitioning the remainder of the Lockwood students, many of whom are bus riders. It's much more sparsely populated on the south side of Mabry. So we could transport them to Parkview, bringing Parkview to 85% utilization. And it would free the Lockwood building up to serve as an early childhood center. We are pretty late to the game as a district to the pre-K game, but since we added pre-K, it has grown and grown, and we have one of the best programs in the state that is highlighted quite often. But there is an increased need for more kiddos who have increased readiness as they go to kindergarten. So there is definitely a need that we haven't been able to answer to in our community. And so we have Ms. Corey Lucero, who's our principal of our pre-K programs, and she's going to talk with you further about how we could benefit from having our pre-Ks, all our little wildcats, in the same location.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and Superintendent Russ. Thank you for having me today. I am the principal over our New Mexico pre-K and our Los Niños sites. Currently today, how we are standing is that our New Mexico pre-K program is in our elementaries. We have at least one, and some facilities do have 2 pre-Ks because we do continue to grow year after year. With this new expansion and proposal that we would be looking at is, and some of the reasons behind it is because we are growing. We have a saturation on our community where we are waiting at 80 students, upwards to 120 students on a waiting list to get into our program. So we want to better serve them and get them ready for kindergarten. Some of this also involves, our staff will be able to work with 3 and 4-year-olds, and it's a specialty. They're little, and so they have to have the staff that understand their little world at the same time. They're in a larger setting, and so sometimes that's not, quite the best place for them, especially when we start looking at their toileting needs. Some of our facilities do not have the adequacy of changing tables, little tiny toilets, just washing their hands, and some of those needs that they really need. The other part of it is the insufficient space in our elementary buildings. Well, mainly at Los Niños, so we have a lot of furniture with our littles, lots of toys because we learn through play. And we are full, we are bumper to bumper. And then some of our littles do have some disabilities. And so our handicap equipment really takes up a large portion of our classrooms. And so getting like a wheelchair or a gate in our classrooms, we're seeing, bumper to bumper, and just, we need a little bit more space for our littles and what their needs are. And then up after that is going to be like our acreage and outside space is out our elementaries. It's beautiful landscaping. It's huge, but it's not secure for us littles. And so we do have littles that will take off and start running across those playgrounds, and they're playing the catch me if you can game. And so, we're looking at, having a little bit more safety and confined spaces that are more appropriate for our littles, but this would have us all under one roof. All of our teachers, our ancillary, and then of course their admin would all be working together in their specialty and providing that support and what they need. The other side of it is at Los Niños, we do not have a gym. So when it comes to our wonderful windy and rainy days and stuff like that, we have nowhere to play. And gross motor is part of our instructional time. And so we are using our hallway currently in order to meet some of those needs. So with us being able to go under one roof, this will allow us to have a playground, to have a gym, to have a cafeteria, but also adequate space in those classrooms. I'm super excited about some of these changes that could be proposed.
So what this means for our current Lockwood students and staff, just to kind of recap, approximately 2/3 joining La Casitas program. The other third traveling north to Parkview to bring that to 85%. And again, we've already initiated the process. I shouldn't say we, Ms. Carpenter has initiated the process to engage in conversation with the staff at Lockwood, and they will receive priority status. And Lockwood would need some minor renovation, as Ms. Lucero mentioned, replacement of sinks and toilets, but it's rather minor. Jay has already checked with that, and it'll be in the numbers will be in our final recommendation. So here's how it all starts to come full circle. With Parkview receiving approximately 120 students from Lockwood, sending about 30 students north to Zia, they then reach the 85% mark at Ordner. With Zia receiving the 30 students from Parkview, they move into the 85% target at Fournier. For James Bigley, they would receive 50 from Cameo, and about 50 of theirs would go to La Casita to finish filling up that building. So they're at 85%. With the 120 students from Cameo, Sandia moves to the 85%. And Arts Academy also moves to the 85% with the students that they receive from Cameo. And so this is a numerical depiction of what we've just described. And so you can see all of the elementaries and the pre-K at the bottom. You can see the movement is the second column. The third, what does that mean for staffing changes? And Ms. Carpenter will go in further detail about that. The projected counts, once we make these transitions, and we have looked at actual class counts right now. So these are pretty accurate. The next column is where that target capacity is. You'll see that Arts Academy and Barry, for their projected count, falls about 50 or so short of the 85%, but that is done with intention because those are magnet type schools. And we want to leave about 50 seats available for children from around the community to request that zone transfer in. So we think that due to the nature of those programs, that we need to leave that space. So that's why you see magnet reserves in the far right-hand column. And so this is one of the handouts as well that you all received in your packet. Okay, Mr. Brady.
Okay, this slide is an outward view of our community as well as our school attendance zones. I want to first emphasize, when you look at those zones, inside each one of those colors, imagine that every household can be represented with a dot. And Michael Sharp, who is the consultant that we contracted with and working on our boundaries and looking at that 85% capacity, has the ability and the information to map out where every student is currently located in each household. He can go down to number of students, grade level of students, if they're special needs students. That information is all at hand with Michael, and we utilized his time 2 days working with our group to make sure that as we looked at capacity and utilization, that we were able to make shifts that were manageable, but also that made sense. And so I did this yesterday. I think it's important for you guys to understand, as we were in the conference room and we were looking at this map, and Ms. Carpenter was really crucial at this time. She had pulled up in front of this map and she was hunched down like this. And she would say, Mr. Sharp, would you please move 2 blocks north and 1 block to the south? How many kids is that? And so we went through a counting process to make sure that as we were looking at our district boundaries, our school zone attendance boundaries, that we were at that 85% mark, but also making sure that we weren't crossing over throughways in our community that might jeopardize our kids that might consistently walk to school. And so the boundaries as well as the capacity were considered. This slide, as you look at, the black lines represent our current boundaries, and then you can see where the colors overlap. Those are the adjusted boundaries, and that would be the new school attendance zones based on the utilization that we needed to achieve with the proposals that are in front of you. And Mr. Sharp is on the line. Before we move from this, if you have any questions about the process or the boundaries that we're working with.
And how does this impact secondary? So look at recommendation 4. The idea is to take Clovis High School Freshman Academy, take the entire school, the entirety of it, staff, administration, everybody, and lift it and put it on the Clovis High School campus. Just an understanding that this is not a foreign concept. There are many, many freshman academies on high school campuses across our country, even within our state. And my understanding is that that was the original idea behind the Clovis High School Freshman Academy when it was originated in Clovis, that it would eventually become a part of Clovis High School. And so I just want you to keep that in mind. But I would like you to have the understanding here to see the numbers when we're looking at the capacity of Clovis High School and what we're sitting at right now. And we're not even using 40% of the capacity, and our freshman academy has over 500 students. We are really low. And so we need to really come up with a plan that's gonna function that high school very well. I would like to invite Mr. Fredericks and Mr. Leatherwood to share some of the benefits of bringing the freshman academy onto the high school campus.
President Martin, members of the board, Superintendent Russ, thank you guys so much for having us at this conversation. I want you to know that working with Mr. Leatherwood's been excellent through this process. And the one thing that she did say is that entire entity will stay intact. And I want you to know from us working together, that's never even been in doubt. So that's always been part of the plan. The freshman academy model works best when that entity is independent. And they have some autonomy. They can do culture things for themselves. That's really important for that freshman class to have that ability and the autonomy to operate independently. So I just want, from me as the principal of high school, I want you to hear that from me, that would be something that we would look forward to working towards as we go. So as we transition this timeline for this is scheduled after the school year 25. So after school year 24-25. That gives us time to plan and prepare to do it right, which I'm really excited about. If this is something that does take place, it's something that you guys recommend and would like us to do. I can't wait to form communities and people are reaching out to say, hey, I have some ideas, and I'm really excited about the energy that some of my faculty has displayed going towards this. Always hold your horses, hang on a minute, but for right now, there is a lot of positive energy on our campus at the high school to bring students up. And a lot of that is because of the friction that we experience with a relationship with the freshman academy, not with us as people, but the limitations we have with transportation, the limitations in access to an equitable educational experience. So students that are ready to experience pathways and careers and get themselves into either AP courses, career-related immediately, getting certifications and starting sooner. Limitations of shop space, limitations of transportation, limitations of the educational options with their master schedules not really jiving. There's some stuff that we can't get done right now with our physical proximity in relation to one another. Having that entity on our site in our 30 acres would be so much nicer to have students experience those AP tracks, to get into a metals class and not do a simulation. Simulation is a great practice, but we need to start welding today if we're going to be welders, right? So the sooner we can get them authentic experiences, those lab settings with the structures that we currently have in place, the better. It's going to be such a big relief for us. The transportation headaches that you experience, that we all experience. Imagine you're a freshman student and you're in an AP class and you're sitting on a bus and you're waiting on a bus and you have to go to the high school to get the class, and then you have to come back to the freshman academy. And our middle school students experience that as well, but really at the freshman, it gets to be athletics, it gets to be AP, it gets to be, and I'd love to have our career pathways get that way with our CT as well, but not having transportation being a limiter to that and having access to our master schedule all day long for introductory level courses or next step courses for those kids is going to be a phenomenal advantage to what we can offer our community and our kids.
Yes, I just want to second what David was saying about, just the transportation. But when we move over there, we want to make sure that we still keep what the freshman academy does, right? We want to be school inside of a school. And one of the most important things about the freshman year is that we're able to put them on track for their college career readiness as well as their social and their emotional transition to the high school. We're able to do that through our teaming process. We have 4 teams that are run through the course, and we're able to check on kids, keep their grades, identify how they learn best. And it's very important that we keep that in order to keep that transition to the high school. It's actually gonna, as we move over there, it'll actually take off a layer of transition. Right now, they become freshmen and they move to a new building, and then as sophomores, they move to a new building. And this will eliminate that layer of transition as well. One of the other things that we do have is that those cores will stay in a central location at CHS, and so our electives some of our electives will be moved throughout the campus, which will further allow that transition to becoming sophomores. But it'll also just allow that the electives will be freshmen only. And so it's going to be very important that our health class and our Spanish classes will still just be freshmen only to keep them in our surrounding area, so that they don't have to worry about being overwhelmed with seniors in their classes. The opportunity for the CTE classes is major. As a freshman academy, we're really able to help with the college readiness, the social side of it, and the emotional side of it. But the career readiness becomes very difficult because our students don't get to see the technology and the careers that are offered at the high school.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Pick up and drop off for these kiddos, that's really gonna add to so I'm assuming you're planning for that.
That's the reason for the year delay. Mrs. Nigerville's going to engage the freshman campus as well. She's going to do strategic planning. That will be part of the planning process as we start moving forward about what the best spot is for our kids, as well as what we're going to do to align between the 2 campuses.
I think it sounds great. I just was picturing in my head all the traffic.
The chaos.
Plus teen drivers in the mall.
We've reached out to Justin Howalt. We've had some preliminary conversations with him. And so there are some highway regulations that are in the middle of what we can and cannot do, but we will develop a plan that puts them in an optimal place so that their parents will pick them up and drop them off.
Separate office.
The whole 10 yards.
Yeah.
It is truly going to be a school within a school.
That's awesome.
I got a question, Mr. Brady.
Yes.
School within school, how we separate the 9th graders from the rest of the school?
As Mr. Leatherwood said, core classes will be isolated in a region of the school to be determined still. And so there are core teachers which make up and consist of their teams, that teaming structure that has that group of kids that are isolated just to those 4 content specialists. They'll continue to be in that area. You'll see kids migrate across for AP classes or for CTE, band and choir. They've already been mixing from the freshman campus now, but we'll continue to isolate them in an area of the main campus so that they have that structure to support them.
So there'd be changes to the physical aspects of the building so that it would be distinctly separate from the high school campus.
I know that Hobbs got the same thing that we're talking about now. They got a building totally separate between the 2.
That's right. So I think you'll see as we begin to direct dollars towards projects, I think you'll see where we're trying to direct dollars to be able to address exactly what you're talking about and begin. There's a lot of work that needs to happen at the high school. And so we need to right size though, so that we can move forward.
Utilize it.
Yes.
So basically they'll have the buildings that are separate for 9th grade, but instead of having to be bused to when they utilize the other facilities, they're just within walking distance. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
They'd be released from their campus to access those higher level courses or CTE pathways, athletics, other extracurriculars that they're involved in. And then they would simply walk back to their campus on the campus.
All right, next slide. All right, recommendation number 5, repurposing current CHSFA in August of 25. Again, we're giving ourselves a year for planning and preparation. So the plan would move iAcademy from Lincoln Jackson to the current Clovis High School Freshman Academy campus in August of 25. We would move ICANN, which is currently placed in portables outside of the Freshman Academy right now, into a wing of CHSFA. And then we would decommission Lincoln Jackson and leave the gym and stage available as needed. But if you understand how the freshman campus is made up, there are 3 distinct wings that run east and west. Academy would populate one wing. ICANN would populate the middle wing, and then the front wing would be the wing that we would designate as office space for SSC that we would move from Cameo into that after some remodeling takes place. We also could put storefronts in each of those wings that have keyless entry, the card readers access, so that those campuses exist and function independently inside of that facility. So basically, we're taking 3 different programs or departments and we're moving them under one roof.
Okay.
So we only have the expense of operating and maintaining that one building for those 3 entities. We also have plans to take the library and renovate that for a training facility that would house many more teachers as we go through our consistent training for our staff. They have some ideas, Mandy and her group, that really, and Ms. Nigerville, who have had experience in other facilities, kind of state-of-the-art things, breakout rooms, large meeting rooms, technology that's meets the needs of what we're doing. So there's a plan there. And then we would look at the current choir room, tech lab, band hall, and art classroom. And we have a need for space for departments in our district, nurses, mental health, and then SSC to occupy that part of it so that we can renovate that and give them a space that's much needed.
Fantastic.
President Martin, members of the board, Superintendent Russ, thank you. It's always great to have a seat at the table because when we're talking about a department that stretches so far and reaches from pre-K all the way through 22, it's really important that we have our unity and our student support center needing to be together. This year we were dispersed throughout the district and we found there was a lot of disconnection, a lot of communication, even though we all knew we were on the same page. IDEA is so complex and it changes daily. It could change in a minute. It could be changing while we're sitting here, depending on what the courts are ruling. And having access to our individuals that are providing those services and being in those roles in an immediate situation is really, really imperative for us to make sure that that occurs. You know, our collaboration is crucial. Our team unity is essential. Right now, to get our staff together, I have to contact 4 different locations and then we have to find a spot where we can meet. And then we all have to see if we can all meet together. And the nice thing about being together is even just that drop off, as you guys all know that you all work in business, it's nice to stop by someone's office and just mention something. We need that with us because that changes so quickly. Something comes up and I have to have a limit, get together with 35 people to chase them down. Now we're in one spot and it's so crucial for us for implementation of our student support services.
Thank you. Okay, recommendation number 6. Liquidate, repurpose our current assets. So in front of you, you see the pictures of SSC, Raintree, and Los Niños. I think it's important for everybody to understand that at the time that we purchased Raintree, the data indicated that we needed a new facility, but COVID hit and things changed substantially after COVID. When you think about the information that we had, the cost of construction, the demographics that we were not aware of at that time that now post-COVID have really illuminated themselves. Hanging on to Raintree is not something that we can do as a district. And everybody's going to be involved in making the shifts, and that would be central offices shift. Instead of housing everybody under one roof, we'll continue to maintain support from a district from multiple locations and maintain GC Ross administration. So liquidate Raintree, liquidate SSC, and then the property that formerly housed Parkview would then be liquidated as well. And then we would look at repurposing Los Niños as a possibility once 4-year-olds have moved over and 3-year-olds have moved over to Lockwood, if that's approved. Los Niños could possibly become a daycare for staff. And so that could be a benefit to our staff and help us attract educators that we desperately need. And then Lincoln Jackson, as I mentioned, has a stage, has a gym with what we're working on currently in our district for elementary athletics that could possibly be a site. as well as CHSFA, the gyms and green space there certainly could be available for us for all of our programs, high school through elementary, if we can get that initiative taken care of.
Okay, so we've done a lot of recommending, lots of moving parts, lots of puzzle pieces putting together. And how does this affect our teachers and our staff and our employees? Just like Ms. Russ said at the very beginning, it's really important for us to remember the human factor of all of this. And while we are having to tighten our belts and stuff financially, we never want to lose the human. We always come back to that. And so whenever we talk to our staff, we've talked to Cameo, we've talked to Lockwood, we've been out there and stood in front of them. You know, the first thing is does everyone have a job? And the answer is yes, everyone has a job. Everyone's going to have a job next year. No one is being ripped. No one is being asked to leave, all those things. So if you add the Cameo staff to the Lockwood staff, roughly it's about 32 teaching positions. That's not including, you know, ancillary staff, custodial staff, cafeteria staff. But if we're just looking at teachers, about 32, give or take 1 or 2, depending on, you know, how many kids are enrolled that day. But it's roughly 32. As we look at the new lines and where every child is living next year, we look at how does that impact the other schools. For instance, this past week, we pulled the enrollment numbers for Arts Academy for next year. How many kindergartners will they have if these new lines are approved? How many first graders? How many second graders? Looking very closely at what that means for each of the impacted schools. So for instance, for Arts Academy, if the lines are approved, they will have roughly, we can project about 98 second graders. It's a lot of second graders, but they have the space for it. Currently at the Arts Academy, they only have 3 second grade teachers. Well, when we look at staffing classes and loads, we want to be sure that we keep our averages below the state maximum. Okay. And the state has determined those benchmarks. For kinder and first, you know, it's typically around 20, 21. You go up to second, third, you know, fourth, fifth, you're getting up into the 22 kids per class. And so when we look at those second graders at Arts Academy and we have 98 kids, but only 3 teachers, in order for us to adequately staff, that means we need 2 more teachers. So we need 5 teachers to teach second grade at Arts Academy next year because they're getting an influx of kids from Cameo. So that's 2 spots that teachers could possibly go into from Cameo if they wanted to follow their students. When we met with Cameo and Lockwood, we told them that we'd be sending out a survey so they could just talk to us. Just tell us what you think. And they did. They expressed their excitement, but they also expressed their concerns. And so after receiving that, I've received it from both campuses so far. I went out to Cameo this past week and met with every single person individually. Just me, just them in a room. And I had their concerns and I said, okay, let's talk. What do you want to do as a professional? Do you want to follow your kids from Cameo? Is that what's driving you? Do you want to follow your colleagues as a group? Do you want to go as a group to Sandia? Or do you want to try something different? Do you want to, you know, maybe try middle school, something you've always wanted to do? Here's your opportunity, but maybe they don't have, they don't want to tell everyone out in the public that's what they want to do. So really sat down and visited with each of them individually. And I have to say, the Cameo staff, I was blown away with the amazingness at that campus and that staff. I talked to Joe and I talked to Renee after I visited with them, and I just, they are precious, precious people. And all of them want to know how can they make this a positive. It was all positive. How can we make this work for us, for our kids, and it be a great thing? And so I was really moved by their compassion and desire to do that. So I want to be sure that it really hit home the point that class sizes will remain the same. we are not putting 30 kids in a classroom. That's not what we're doing. We are looking at how many there will be in these new zones and then staffing it appropriately so that those class sizes don't go up above those state mandates. Okay. So when you see on social media, there's 30 kids in a classroom, that's not correct. They're going to remain at the smaller sizes that we've come to enjoy. By doing that and looking at line by line, school by school, and all of the movements, we need to add roughly 32 to 36 spots at other schools. Well, we have 32 teachers from Cameo and Lockwood to fill those spots. And so it's going to take some shifting, just like it did with the sixth grade academy, but we were able to do it through conversation and open dialogue, and everyone got what they wanted except one person. But and so far, things are going really well. I'll be back at Cameo tomorrow to visit with more of them, and I'll be at Lockwood all day Thursday to start my visits with them, and then again after spring break to visit with them. So with that being said, we could save approximately $1.5 million in staffing annually after the redistricting occurs through attrition and the non-rehiring of certain positions. For instance, we currently have 3 cafeteria workers at Cameo. Well, we will no longer need the cafeteria function at Cameo, so those people would move to their desired locations, but then we wouldn't have to rehire. And as people retire or resign, then we just wouldn't rehire for those positions. Okay, so eventually it will be about a $1.5 million savings in staffing. And then, like I said before, each staff member is having a one-on-one conversation with myself. Many of them have conversations and then will email me and then email again and, hey, wait, what about this? I forgot about that. So we're trying really hard to listen and take in all of the information and put together a staffing puzzle that everyone is proud of and is okay with. And even though we're emotional, it's best for kids ultimately. So you have any questions about the staffing component of what we're doing?
Sounds like you're giving them every opportunity. Thank you for doing that. Will be important to them.
So
Is there,
oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Is there a chance that we might end up with more teachers in the right places and have to have less subs going forward? Is that a possibility, or is that something that we?
It is. In looking at these numbers, it looks like we are only going to have to hire 4 elementary teachers this year.
That's awesome.
In order to be fully staffed for next year. And we haven't even looked at handing out letters of intent to our ed fellows, our student teachers. Like, we haven't even started. We're not going to do a job fair right now because this takes priority. But we think we could be fully staffed at elementary for sure.
Wow. That's nice. It's something we hadn't got to.
That's a whole new.
Yeah, a whole new world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're getting close. So be starting to think about your questions. I just want to kind of tie it all together for you. So in the short-term future, in addition to that 1.5 million annually, recurring savings for personnel, the closure of Cameo and the reduction of our inventory would save us about another $1.5 million in operational costs, just heating, cooling.
Is that a yearly
day-to-day stuff? Yes.
Yearly savings?
Yearly savings. And so those combined start pushing us towards about 3 million savings annually. But the thing that you need to know, the 180-day school day controversy has still not been settled, although the rule has been published. And tonight I'll be bringing a resolution to you with regard to how the superintendents would like to push back on that a little bit. But in the event that we're unable to do that, we think that we'll need to add 3 contract days for teachers and EAs at a minimum. which cost us about $750,000 a year going forward into the future. So you think about this 3 million in savings, well, there's 750,000 of it right there just to answer to the 180-day rule that is not funded. The other thing that we've learned from this budget season is that our bilingual factor is no longer generating funds. So that was historically generating about $500,000 towards the district's operational, and that no longer exists. So there's a loss of another $500,000. So now we're up to pushing towards $1.5 million of the 3 million that we're going to save. So I think Molly or Josh said it earlier, I'm not sure who said it, that we've got to be really careful about not overextending into buildings so that we can't take care of the people. And we don't want to get in a situation where we don't have the operational funds to keep our class sizes at the size that we want, where we can make those decisions about staying at or below those averages. So I just want to pull the number side back into it. I can tell you that we have had conversation, and I'm going to steal Ms. Nigerville's term. We could make a small adjustment for next year and not be anywhere near fixing the 85% target. And then a little bit the next year, and we could take the next 10 or 12 years to try to gradually get ourselves into that place. But we saw how always living up in the air during the COVID time, when people just wanted to know what to expect, and Ms. Nigerville's term is death by 1,000 cuts, people wondering what's coming next, which campus is going to be affected next. What we've put together in this package, it is very progressive, it is bold, but it almost entirely fixes, it corrects, makes the correction that we need to make. And so that puts us in really good position to start our strategic planning work that we're interested in starting next year. The other thing is that I don't think any of us sitting around this table can look our community in the eye and ask for them to vote for another bond election when we don't have our house in order with regard to utilizing our facilities. And that's a tough call, but we don't want to go to the voters and ask for that if we're not being as good as stewards as we could be. And then, you know, we've talked and we've braced against all of the things that might be negative, but before we kind of bring this to a close, I want to reiterate some of the possibilities and the opportunities that this creates, especially with our CTE, not just in the program expansion, but facility improvement. Bringing more of our little 4-year-olds into our pre-K program so that they enter kindergarten more ready to learn. The opportunity with employee daycare, it doesn't just benefit our employees, it also can become an early childhood certification center, and we can work directly hand in hand with the high school with those student internships so that we can get students with those certifications. It allows us to continue with our specialty programs, our fine arts, STEM, and then the project-based learning that we want to explore at La Casita. And the other thing that we're facing, and you all know that we've had millions of dollars directed to us, federal dollars from CARES and ARP funding from the COVID years. And with that, we were able to add some social workers and counselors and TOSAs at the elementary, and we're supporting reading specialists with that. All of those funds have now expired, and those positions have become very critical to how we do business. And so by getting the finances in order and how we're managing our facilities, it gives us greater opportunity to maintain some of those positions that we've kind of come to rely on and that allow principals to really be the instructional leaders in their buildings. And so just that reminder, all of these moving parts, thank you so much for your patience listening. It brings our elementaries and our pre-K to that 85% capacity. It gets us right about the 75% at the high school, but that could be corrected as we go into renovation. The state will pay 100% of the cost to bring a building down, just because of the savings over time for not running that building. So I think that that's all that I can wrap together on that slide. I'll pass it back to you, Jay.
Okay, so these are the final recommendations that came from the facility master planning committee. So option 1A, consolidate Cameo and then demolish it a year after we consolidated those kids to other campuses. And the dollar figures on the right side, you can see our match or the state's contribution, all totaling up to about $31.5 million. But I want to make sure that we highlight the options that we have considered for recommendation. Consolidate the high school. That means moving the freshman campus to the high school and getting that capacity and utilization up. And then looking at our bathroom upgrades, we need to renovate the bathrooms at the high school and then our middle school. Those bathrooms at the high school, and I went to Yucca, I'll just bring that up, are the same bathrooms that I went to when I was there a long time ago. So desperately needing that renovation. And then we're also looking at single-use occupancy, which will help with some of the operational and management issues that we have during the school day. Technology upgrades, you can see that's included as part of our technology plan. Security upgrades, card access readers, cameras, and then bullet resistant film on our vestibules as people enter, continuing to keep our campuses as safe as we can keep them. And then Marshall Middle School and Sandia received grants for fire alarm and doors and windows. And so we have a match there with the state that would get that work done. And then PSOC funded priority 1 and then unfunded priority 1 repairs, maintenance and repairs that need to be done. And then PSCOC funded priority 2 repairs, and then unfunded repairs are part of the package that was recommended for us to do to maintain our buildings adequately. And then renovate the auditorium at Marshall, and then renovate the lecture hall to become a performing arts center. I want the board to remember that we have some big rocks in our district. What we do for arts, fine arts, and what we do for our athletic programs are programs that are supported holistically by this community. Marshall Auditorium, you'll see a picture of it, is in desperate need of renovation. That's more than just a school district facility. It's a community facility, and we need to bring that up to par so that we have a facility that will continue to support a vast variety of needs and activities in our community. And then you think about the high school. I'm very proud of what we're doing with our fine arts program and what we're doing with theater specifically in middle school, going up to high school, needing a space at the high school that kind of mirrors what's a arts academy, and giving our kids that are in that track the ability to work more efficiently. And so that's part of our funding package. And then you'll look at the renovations that need to happen at Clovis High School Freshman Academy and also Clovis High School as we make the shifts to bring those facilities online, professional development, storefronts that we need. Those bathrooms need to be renovated as well for the kids that'll be occupying that space and also our support staff. And then you'll look at Lockwood. We worked with PSFA and we also worked with ECECD on coming to consensus. We will completely renovate the existing bathrooms to be adequate for what a 3- and 4-year-old needs. And those toilets are wall mounted. They're not mounted from the floor. So we'll have to bust in and change where those toilets are mounted, as well as the sinks, bringing those down so that our littles can get to those and practice good hygiene. All of that, $31.5 million over the course of the next 5 years. Any question? These are just pictures of some of the projects that HVAC units. I'd like everybody to know that when one of those rooftop units go out, those are $16,000 to replace. And they keep going down. Some of these that are pictured are from the 1990s. And so we've done a really good job of maintaining them. And then you can see the fire alarm and the doors that are going to be replaced with the grant that we received. You can see those toilets there at CHSFA. You can see why we need to renovate that bathroom so that we have some privacy, as well as roofs and some other pictures and windows. And then some more of our priority 2 repairs that are funded through PSOC. And then you can see some of our existing facilities that we need to touch.
Marshall.
That's Marshall, yes. And then you can see the bathrooms at Yucca, why they desperately need to be renovated. We want to touch those, okay? As well as the high school.
So as I mentioned a little bit ago, we're just at the beginning of having the conversations around this. And so kind of what we were thinking next in the timeline. We've held some in-person meetings. Ms. Sharna Gardner has already put a special placeholder on our website for all of this information. She's doing a really good job with the timeline, and anything that is pertinent is getting posted there so people can access it. This meeting has been recorded and it will become available probably tomorrow so that people can go back. So much information that people may need the opportunity to listen, say, I didn't quite catch that, and then they can go back and listen to it and access the documents that are online. We are working for ways to capture written input by use of a QR code where people could ask questions that would go into our FAQ document, or they could provide feedback. We also plan to host at least one in-person meeting where we're nailing down that date. We've got to look at when Marshall is available. We think we'll just hold it there. And parents at sites that were receiving most impact received a notification yesterday that went from the district just saying you may want to be paying attention to this set of information and these opportunities for learning more. So that's our 2 hours for you. We thought might take 3. This slide, you can go back to the other one. We haven't finished that, but. So we've got lots of people that you can ask questions of, or you may just need to simmer on it.
I have go ahead, sir.
I was gonna say, if there are any questions.
Transportation, I know it's shifting a bunch because of where we're moving everybody. Have we worked all those details out yet, or is that?
I've worked with, Corey Adair has received the new attendance zone boundaries. We're working through funding and what's allowable with early childhood. And so until this is approved, I can't definitively say anything, but this is manageable from his desk, the things that we're proposing.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, this is a 1 to 3 year process that we're talking about, right?
The plan would be 5 years.
5 years, okay.
With the first step being the consolidation and closure of our elementaries and then transitioning our high school. It's a great question because what it does do for us is gives us that time to really prepare for what needs to happen at the high school. Moving forward, right sizing and then working on the things that need to be worked on that were identified by Molly and Josh and their teams. But the high school is a very large issue that's going to take a lot of thoughtful planning as well as financial consultation of how we're going to move forward with that facility. It does need to be addressed, especially when you start thinking about population as well as career pathways, what they're doing for CTE special programs that are of interest. And so this gives us some time as we move forward in what we're going to do past this 5 years in the next cycle.
I'll thank everyone for being a part of this committee. You know, it's important that we get input from everyone in our district, from all parts. So I thank you for your recommendation. It's gonna be a very difficult thing to do, but you know, most important thing are our kids and educating our kids. It doesn't matter where our kids go. You're gonna get a great education. But again, thank you for your time and for all the thought that was put into this.
I would like to say that I appreciate that the district leadership has embraced a outside facilities management, facilities master plan, because I think that gives us some insight that we've been lacking for a few years. And so I think we might have found ourselves in a better position had we been more vigilant about that kind of thing. So thank you for the work and thank you for touching all of the details of that. I have had the rare opportunity to visit lots of other school districts in some work that I do. Nobody maintains their facilities like we do. So, you know, we take that for granted as community members here, that our grounds look lovely and our facilities are awesome, and we should not. So thank you for making sure that that does happen.
Okay, I guess that brings us to the close. I want to definitely thank the staff and the volunteers that worked on this, because it's tough. I mean, we get the answer to ask the tough questions, you know, and not everybody gonna be happy. with what we're gonna decide. What we're looking for, what's best for this district, what's best for our students and overall, and our employees. Because without the employees, there would be no district. So we want to say thank you. And all the time and hours you guys put in that and making this presentation. With that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn meeting.
I'll
I'll move to
second.
adjourn.
Got a motion and a second, get those? Call the roll, please.
Member Cordova,
Yes.
member Hamilton,
Yes.
Secretary Epps. Yes. Vice President Osborne.
Yes.
President Martin.
Yes, we're hereby adjourned.